coming to you from the My Little Falls studio here in beautiful Little Falls, New York. It's your host, Scott Kinville, and another episode of Marty's Illegal Stick.
Hey, what's up, hockey fans, and welcome to episode number 36 of Marty's Illegal Stick. We're recording here on Thursday, July 29th, 2021. We don't normally record on Thursday, but scheduling conflicts all across the board have pushed us into a different day and a different time. So, as a result, we're not going to have our usual cast of characters with us. But before I bring in my co-host for today, I do want to just kind of go over real quick, number 36, episode 36. So, we've been playing this little game where we kind of remember numbers from players of past. And I know Bad Zuccarello comes up to a lot of people's mind, but I also think Matthew Barnaby wore number 36, as I recall. And I was also thinking about Glenn Anderson when he played for the Rangers. So just, useless musings off the top of my head. So anyways, we got a great show lined up for you here today. And before I bring our guest, I wanted to bring in our co-host. So riding shotgun with me in the studio today, he's going to have to step up his hockey knowledge game today. Maybe not. Our producer, Dave the Save Warner. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, I stepped up and watched the expansion draft. What do you want?
I was so impressed.
You were
impressed. Texting me. I was like, wow.
I couldn't stay away from Kraken.
You know what? You're an hour crackhead. I got to tell you, Dave, I felt like a proud father. I really did. I was like, oh, my God. I go, he's grown up. What have I done?
Created a hockey monster.
That's right.
Oh.
Hey. So normally we would have the professor and Gumper and the doctor of hockey with us today. But like I said, we're on a different day. And, everybody's got actual jobs they got to go to. They got to put food on the table. And Gumper's doing whatever Gumper does in his post-retirement career. So couldn't make it today.
Yeah.
So anyways, we dug deep into the show's past. And we brought back one of the original founding fathers. Ladies and gentlemen, he is back. Maybe not for long, but he's back. It is the Emmy Award-winning Shakutami, Rich Massucci. What's happening, brother?
Well, listen, I'm still on vacation, so
looks like he's in Hawaii.
Yeah.
I wish I was in Hawaii, but you guys dug me out of hock for the day, so here I am.
Well, we're glad to have you back.
It's good to be back, actually.
How you been?
I'll tell you what, I am enjoying my little mini vacation. Obviously I do the entertainment venues around here, and they're all about to open up yet, so I've been just kind of hanging out and doing my thing for the many months. So here I am in my Hawaiian shirt, ready to roll.
Hey, you know what? What better hockey attire than a Hawaiian shirt? That's
what I said. It takes a brave man to wear this, so let's go.
Well, don't worry. By the year 2040, they'll be expanding to Hawaii, so it's okay. So without further ado, I want to bring in our guest for today. We've had this gentleman on before. He talked about his book, The Ice Wars, the complete story of New York's greatest modern sports rivalry. But we didn't get a chance to talk about his podcast, and we also want to talk about plenty of things that are going on around the NHL. And so here's that book, by the way. Everyone's got to put it up. So I want to bring back Mr. Gil Martin of the Locked On Islanders podcast. What's happening, Gil?
Not much. Plenty going on in the hockey world, so good timing for this episode. No question about that.
Well, you ain't kidding, right? What a busy week.
Yeah.
I don't think I slept much.
Who did? This is such a compressed off season. It's not even funny, but hey, bring it. It's all good. Exactly.
It keeps things from getting boring. That's for sure.
Yep.
Because usually, if you think about it, by this time of the year, everybody's just kind of in the doldrums, right? So they call it the dog days. Mm-hmm. Not this time around, that's for sure. So, Gil, the last time you were on the show, we didn't get a chance to talk much about your podcast. So I want you to kind of just fill us in on the Locked On Islanders podcast and how you got involved in that.
Locked On Podcast Network, they have podcasts for pretty much every team in all the major sports, and I knew they were looking for hockey people. And, after writing the book and covering hockey in the New York area for a long time, I was very happy to be able to land the Locked On Islanders gig. And it's a Monday through Friday podcast. We cover the sport, and the Islanders inside out and backwards kind of a thing. And, always good to keep people updated and have a daily podcast that really deals with everything that's going on in real time, pretty much.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you, I know what kind of preparation goes in for a weekly show. A daily show must be really onerous sometimes.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. And I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't love it. So, look, compared to where we were during the worst part of the pandemic when there was no hockey for 6 months and we didn't know when it was going to start again, this year is much easier. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that had to be difficult, especially when everything was, shut down and all that. Were you still going daily during that time as well?
We were, and it wasn't easy, but let's just say we did a lot of looking back at some of the greatest moments in franchise history. Let's put it that way.
Did you discuss your wardrobes like we just did with Rich? I mean,
well, not as in depth, but yeah.
That's great. That is great. So doing a daily podcast like that, you must actually get a lot of contact with the Islander players, coaching staffs, media personnel.
I have, in the past. And it's with COVID now, it's, everything's with Zoom and everything else. So it's a little bit different. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's got to be so much fun. And I think we talked about that the first time you were on the show as well. But as always, just want to give a shout out to Brendan Burke, who was actually, we kind of feel like the native son around here. He was with the Utica Comets. He was the play-by-play announcer for K-Rock. And actually, Rich, I think you had a interesting experience with him as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I actually was called to work the booth with him one day and failed miserably. But that's all right. He was there. He picked up the pieces, and somehow we made it through. So
must have been his attire.
Were you wearing that shirt too?
No, but listen, if I was, I could understand why they would have given me the call. They would have said, that man is deadly serious about hockey. Look at that hockey. Look at that fruity shirt.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, you got called in to do stats for the AHL All-Star Classic, wasn't it?
I did. I was doing camera work downstairs, and my little portion of the day ended, and they said, well, you want to go upstairs and work the stat booth? And I'm like, I have never done it. You'll be fine. And I failed miserably.
But it's an experience you'll never forget.
That is very true. Very true.
Oh, boy. So, Gil, the Islanders have got a brand new spanking arena just about to open up there, the UBS Arena at Belmont Park. Have you been by it yet, or?
I have not been by there yet except virtually, but it looks really, really nice, and I'm looking forward to it. I mean, look, the experiment at Barclays Center, it served its purpose, but it's a nice arena, but it really isn't made for hockey. So, and it's not convenient for most Long Islanders to get to just because of the traffic pattern and the way the whole thing works. So having a brand new arena that's made for hockey, really putting this Islanders team in a different position than they were in, let's say, 5 years ago when trying to get a free agent to come to Long Island was not exactly easy.
Sure, absolutely. And, it's funny you mentioned that with the Barclays Center because, I always kind of thought that maybe they could have tried to make more of a connection to the old New York Americans who were Brooklyn for one season. I was kind of, I always thought a throwback night would have been interesting.
Now, if they would have worn those jerseys with the stars on them, that would have been something else. But,
yeah, right. Especially if they played the Rangers that night, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, boy. Well, as we were just talking before we went on the air here, it has been one crazy busy week in the NHL. And, we'll get to the expansion draft in just a second. But the NHL entry draft, the Islanders didn't have many choices, but how do you think they did?
Look, it's always difficult to say with the NHL draft. Most of the players, who you pick this year are not going to see the ice for 3 or 4 years and not going to make an impact for that long. So, when you're drafting 18-year-olds who aren't going to play until they're 22 or 23 in the NHL, it's a little more difficult. But I think at the end of the day, you have to have faith in Lou Lamoriello and in his ability to find 1 or 2 diamonds in the rough in the second, third, fifth, whatever round it is. And, their second round pick, which was the first pick they had overall, Rattay, that's, it was a bit of a gamble. You can get a guy with first round talent who sort of slipped a little bit this year. And with COVID and all the irregularities going on in the hockey world this year, who knows what caused that. So, you take a chance in the second round on a guy like that. And if he bounces back and recovers his earlier form, you get first round value in the second round. So worth a shot.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what was it, about a year or two prior, he was actually projected by some to go number 1 overall.
Yeah. Talent was there, and for whatever reason, he seemed to hit a wall this year. So we'll see whether or not he can get back on track.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they've had the junior showcase going on over in Europe. I can't remember exactly where that's being played, but they say he looks phenomenal over there right now. So, if he does get back on track, you guys may really have struck gold. Yeah,
we'll see. Call me back in 2 or 3 years. We'll talk about it.
Well, I hope you come on back on before that, because we have a football.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But, I did want to touch on that expansion draft real quick with Jordan Eberle from the Islanders going to the Kraken. How much do you think that's going to hurt the Islanders?
Well, look, you don't want to lose a guy like Eberle in the sense that, he's been a consistent player for the most part. Look, all goal scorers are streaky. He has his streakiness going at times. But, it is not easy to play on a line with Matthew Barzal because of his unique style and the way he handles the puck and his speed. And Eberle did a pretty good job of that. To me, the key question as far as Eberle's loss is concerned is, what do you do with the $5.5 million in cap space that you freed up by losing Jordan Eberle in the expansion draft? If they can take that money and put it to good use, it may be one step back to take 2 steps forward. But, he was a good Islander for the time that he was here. His production was more second-line winger than first-line winger, but part of that is the system the Islanders play. It's defense first, and all the players on this roster sacrifice individual statistics for team success. And, I give Eberle a lot of credit for being willing to do that and doing a good job of it for the time that he was here.
Oh, absolutely. And, in Seattle, he's definitely going to get first-line minutes because I listen, I'm not a, NHL GM. I never ever pretended to be, but wow, even after some of the free agent moves they made, they're going to be really hard-pressed to score some goals. Quite frankly, I'm very shocked that it ended up being no side deals involved with any of those picks.
I was too. I really thought Lou Lamoriello was going to do one for the Islanders, but I guess at the end of the day, it wasn't necessary.
No, I guess not. I mean, I'll tell you, speaking of Lamoriello, and I'm just going to come out and say it, the man's a genius. I have to say that. To be able to unload Andrew Ladd onto Arizona like that, with just giving up draft picks, getting them to take that entire contract was just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, they've been trying to do it for so long, I mean, just trying to find someone to take that contract. And look, I felt for Andrew Ladd. He has the talent to play in the National Hockey League, but not at the price that, at the cap hit that he was at. So I hope for his sake that he gets an opportunity to play in Arizona and maybe do well there and resurrect his career. But boy, was that a big relief for the Islanders to free up that cap space, because it really was, sadly enough, dead money.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny because you're right. Andrew Ladd is definitely a talented hockey player. There's no doubt about it. He's an NHL level hockey player. But I think he's one of those guys that kind of cashed in on being on a very strong Hawks team. And it's kind of one of those, maybe he was paid for what the entire team did and not him as an individual, really.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that, but hey, he'll cash the checks anytime. So.
Oh, yeah. Believe me, I definitely would too. I wouldn't just give him back and say, you know what, I don't deserve this. Here, take the money back. Yeah, right.
Richwood, you could see him thinking about it.
I just give that money back. Who needs money? Yeah. I play for the glory.
Yeah. Now there'd be an 18-wheeler in front of Rich's house full of Hawaiian shirts is what there'd be. Oh, boy. But, between getting rid of Ladd and, like you said, with Eberle going to the Kraken, they do have a lot of cap space now. Last time I checked, I think it was like over $17 million in cap space available. But you still do have some players of your own you got to re-sign. Anthony Beauvillier, Ilya Sorokin, Adam Pelech come to mind, along with Kyle Palmieri and maybe even Travis Zajac. I did see an article today saying that they are pushing hard to keep Palmieri. It looks pretty much like he's going to stay. Did you see that as well, or?
Yeah, I think it's realistic. Palmieri has indicated he wants to stay. He's a Long Island native. The Islanders have indicated they would welcome him back. And, he could be a decent fit on the third line, give him some experience. He can play, a number of different positions. He can move up to the second or first line in a pinch if needed. There is some value in holding on to Kyle Palmieri if you're not overspending. And then, the other name that the Islanders need to re-sign is Casey Cizikas, who's an unrestricted free agent, and they don't want to lose him. There's no question about that.
Do you think in Cizikas' case that'd be a guy that would be worth overpaying for?
I think it is, to the extent that the identity line that Cizikas, Martin, Clutterbuck line, those guys together are greater than the sum of their parts. You put each of them separately, they're useful fourth line players, but you put them together and they lift each other's game to a different level, and they're much more effective as a unit than they would be individually. So, and Cizikas gives you a lot of intangibles. He's a good penalty killer. He's probably their second best face-off man, and he's a great forechecker, digs for pucks in the corners. He's the kind of guy that, there are 32 teams in the NHL, and I'm sure the other 31 teams would all love to have a player like Casey Cizikas on their roster.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, when you get a line like that and you break them up, it kind of reminds me of like when a big band, like say, remember when Motley Crue broke up and they all did their own individual projects? It was okay. But then you put them back together and it's like, okay, that's what it was meant to be right there,
No doubt.
The other ones, too, that really kind of Ilya Sorokin, that's an interesting one because, let's face it, Semyon Varlamov played out of his mind this year. There's no doubt about it. And he only signed a 1-year deal to come over from the KHL. Any indications on what kind of contract they're looking to offer him?
I'm not sure what the number's going to be. It'll be a little bit higher, I think, than what he signed for this past year. I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of like $3 to $4 million probably for Sorokin, depending on the length of the contract. But I think he is the goalie of the future. Maybe you go with Varlamov one more year, and then you start thinking about, maybe it's time for Sorokin to take over as the number one goalie, and maybe you save a little cap space by moving Varlamov after this coming season.
I wanted to ask you about that too, because that's kind of an interesting. I'm not trying to say this in a condescending way or anything, but I don't think Varlamov's value is going to get any higher than it is right now.
No, I agree.
And there's a lot of teams out there that are looking for goaltending. Could it possibly be maybe an option to move on before this season and to try to strike while the iron's hot, so to speak, and maximize the return for him?
That would make sense. The only reason I think that it probably waits one more year is that Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello trust veterans more than they trust younger guys. And as well as Sorokin played, and he even played well in the playoffs when they called upon him, I think that they need one more, or at least part of one more year. Maybe the trade deadline becomes an issue, but I think they want to see Sorokin do it a little bit longer before they're ready to commit to saying he's ready, he's our guy going forward, and we're going to stick with him for this year.
Yeah, and Rich, it's too bad that the Islanders and Penguins are such bitter rivals, because I was trying to help you out a little bit, in a weird kind of way.
Yeah.
The Penguins are looking for some goaltending, right?
Always.
But I think it'd be a cold day in hell before the Islanders ever traded Varlamov to the Penguins. That's for sure.
Oh boy, yeah, no, not those two teams. They're not trading. There's no. That's not happening. They should after what they did, but that's fine.
Yeah. So another name that's been linked to the Islanders over and over again is Zach Parise. Now that it was bought out in Minnesota, do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, I do. I think that's a real possibility. Obviously, you have the link to Lou Lamoriello from their, Parise's time with the Devils. Parise's father played with the Islanders in the mid to late 70s, was a big part of that magical 1975 playoff run. And I don't think he would be very expensive at this point. I think, you can get Parise. He's not going to cost you $6-7 million a year. It'll probably cost you, $2 to $4 million a year. maybe less if you can work out the details. So, is Zach Parise still a 25, 30 goal scorer? No. But can he be a useful player who understands what Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello want, forwards to do, to back check, to be responsible in their own zone? Can he be a leader for this team? Yeah, he can. And maybe if he goes to the third line with Palmieri, maybe Oliver Wahlstrom moves up to the first line. If you don't bring in that big sniper that rumor has it the Islanders are trying to bring in.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, that's I don't think he'd be a bad pickup at all, really. And I don't think he'd be, I was actually quite surprised because Ryan Suter was bought out the same day he was. And the contract that Suter signed in Dallas, I was quite surprised at. I mean, he got 4 years. But I don't think you give Parise that.
No, and in fact, that was the deal breaker with the Islanders. The Islanders had some reported interest in Suter, but he's 36 years old, and to give him 4 years, hey, look, I can't blame the player. If someone gives you the 4 years, you take it. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to give a 36-year-old defenseman a 4-year deal at this point.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you had mentioned Wahlstrom. Is there any other prospects coming up through that can maybe make the team this year and make a difference?
There are a couple of guys. I mean, Otto Koivu is probably 1 more year away. Kiefer Bellows, this is probably his last chance to show that he can do the things without the puck that he needs to do to establish himself in that Islander lineup. Those would be the 2 biggest names. There are a couple of defensemen, but I think they're also more or less a year away from crashing the lineup, mostly because, again, Trotz and Lamoriello prefer the veterans to the younger guys. Sure.
And I saw former prospector Josh Hosang signed a PTO with Toronto, I believe.
Yeah.
So, good luck to him. It's a shame with that kid, too. He's insanely talented. But I have a feeling that if he pulls some of the same shenanigans he did with the Islanders, it's not going to go well in Toronto for him.
No, it won't. Look, I like the kid. I've interviewed him several times. He's definitely very confident, if you want to put it nicely, but he's a good kid at heart. Yeah. And I hope he can resurrect his career, whether it's in Toronto or somewhere else, because he definitely has the talent to play in this league. It's just a question of the discipline and the maturity.
Oh, absolutely. And you always want to see a talented player make it, too. I mean, just obviously straighten out the problems that were holding them back, of course. But, the league and fans in general just love a flashy player. One more player I want to ask you about possibly coming back would be Travis Zajac.
I would tend to think he will not be back. I wouldn't rule it out entirely, but I just don't see, if you bring back Palmieri and you sign Parise, where do you fit Zajac? He would have to be the 13th or 14th forward. I don't know if that's the kind of role he'd be looking for. Maybe he could find another team that would give him more minutes and a bigger role. So is it possible? Yeah, but is it likely? I would say no.
Yeah, that makes sense. That really does, even though he was quite serviceable for the Islanders during the playoffs. So another rumor that the team has been linked to, and I see it's kind of gaining traction again somehow, some way, is they're in the trade market for Vladimir Tarasenko. What's your thoughts on that?
Look, they need a sniper to take them to the next level. They've gotten to the conference final 2 years in a row. I almost go back to the 70s Islanders where 75, 76, 77, they make the semifinals. They're a growing team. They're a good team. And then in the draft, they add Mike Bossy, that guy who every defense has to account for, who puts fear in the hearts of opposing coaches and players. And within a couple of years after Bossy's arrival, they win. Well, they would have won the President's Trophy if it existed in 79. And then in 80, they start the 4 Stanley Cup runs. It would take this team to another level. It would make them that much more dangerous to add a bona fide goal scorer. Obviously, with Tarasenko, my 2 concerns are, number 1, his health. He's missed a lot of time over the last 2 years with injuries. And then number 2, would he be willing to play the defense first Barry Trotz system that the Islanders require all their forwards to play? I don't know if he fits that style and what accommodations the team would make for him, but he would definitely add a dimension that they're lacking right now and that they need to add.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm going to go right out on a limb and say that obviously he still wants out of St. Louis. I think there's still a lot of acrimony there from what I can see because of those shoulder surgeries, because the first two were apparently the team doctors wanting the certain doctor to do them or something like that. And then he got another opinion. And the third surgery was this other doctor going in and cleaning up what was basically messed up in the first two surgeries. And he says that, that cleaned everything up. He's fine, 100% clean bill of health. Yeah, that $7.5 million cap hit's going to hurt for, it's 2 years left. But I think he's going to be an absolute steal for somebody who picks him up. And as we have seen, the salary cap doesn't seem to matter much anymore. I think every team in the league can attest to that one. So, you guys were one game from the Stanley Cup final. What's the outlook for this season?
Well, you got a couple of holes you need to fill. Obviously, we talked about losing Eberle, and we still need to find someone to take Nick Leddy's place. I mean, Leddy was the power play quarterback on the first power play unit. He was their best puck-moving defenseman. Noah Dobson will probably move up and take some of those minutes, but then you still need another defenseman to fill in that gap. Look, I think that I know that the coaching staff and the management, between Trotz and Lamoriello, they're going to maximize whatever talent they have. And if they can add that sniper and find a serviceable defenseman to replace Nick Leddy, I think they can contend again because they play the right style of hockey. They play disciplined. They play smart. They don't take foolish penalties. They're well coached, and they're they play good defense. So they're in almost every game. And the good thing about the way the Islanders play when the playoffs arrive, they don't have to change styles because they're playing that same style all year round. And, there are advantages and disadvantages to that. You can get worn down doing that and get tired. But at the same time, there's less adjustment to be made. And I think this team can contend again this year, maybe for 1 or 2 more years, and then you sort of have to reassess.
Yeah, and that's kind of usually the way it goes in the salary cap world too. Is the more and more success you get, the more guys want to get paid, and then you start the merry-go-round all over again. But Gil, this has been a great talk. We really appreciate you coming on to talk about the Islanders with us. And the divisions going back to the way they were is going to be very interesting too, because I'm sure like Rich being a Penguins fan will assess too. It seems like the teams in your division are making an effort to get better too. So it's going to be a very, very interesting division this year. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you got to love it. I love the competition, and the Penguins and the Islanders have been great rivals for a long time, but it's boiled over more than a few times actually. but for the most part, it's a pretty good rivalry, all in fun. But I mean, look, the Penguins, the Penguins are going to be there. The Devils made some big moves in free agency, obviously with Dougie Hamilton coming on board, and this is going to be. You know what? You don't want it to be easy. You want there to be a challenge and to see some great hockey. And I think we're going to see some great hockey in the Metropolitan Division this year.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's going to be a really, really fun division to watch. So, and best of luck to you guys this year. Really, I mean, that's what you guys have done has been absolutely incredible. Well, we're going to go to breakaway trivia here. If you want to stick around for the other 2 segments, you're more than welcome to, Gil.
Yeah, I'll stick around.
Okay, absolutely. So we're going to do our breakaway trivia, then we're going to do our commercial break. So breakaway trivia is brought to you by Jimmy the Iceman McNeil's book, The Red and White Zamboni Ice Machine. To order a copy of the book, you can email Jimmy at mac_iceman@hotmail.com, and we've also got that up on our website. So this week's breakaway trivia question is, what player was selected in 3 straight NHL expansion drafts? The answer when we come back.
Visit My Little Falls and stay connected with the latest news, information, and events in the city and the area. Our mission is to generate interest in the community and connect residents in a more meaningful way by facilitating deeper conversations about how these stories will shape the future of the Mohawk Valley. Join thousands of weekly visitors who stay up to date with feature stories, interviews, videos, our event calendar, and print publication, the Mohawk Valley Express. It's about timely local news, for the community, keeping citizens informed about important issues, telling about the people who live and work here, and giving locally owned businesses the opportunity to reach a very targeted audience of locals and tourists alike. It's a whole new form of media-rich content developed specifically for today's mobile lifestyle and listeners. You can download our iOS app in the iTunes Store, listen to our country music streaming radio station, or sign up for a weekly newsletter. Stop by today at myfunfalls.com. You'll be glad you did.
And we're back with segment 2 of Marty's Illegal Stick Hockey Hot Takes. And as always, we kick this segment off with the answer to our breakaway trivia question. But I'm going to give you that question one more time just so you can rethink it. And the question is, what player was selected in 3 straight NHL expansion drafts? Shakutami Massucci, do you have an answer?
I have no idea. But you know what?
This was kind of out of left field. I will admit that.
Yeah, I was sitting here thinking, and I'm like, who? There's never anything easy with you. But the fact that we're talking about the Islanders today, I started like, maybe there's not Trottier?
No.
Not even close.
Oh, hey, but it's a good guess. It's a good guess.
Yeah.
Gil, you got a guess?
Ah, boy. Let's see. No, don't have a guess on this one.
Yeah, this one's a really obscure one, and I wouldn't have known this either, except I had a chance to talk to this gentleman on a Barry Shelley's Rink of Dreams show, and it's Jim Thompson. So he was selected in the 91 expansion draft for the Sharks, and then he was selected in the 92 expansion draft for the Senators, and then he was selected in the 93 expansion draft for the Ducks. And that's because he was traded back to the Kings twice. So it's a crazy merry-go-round how that all happened for him. But, yeah, could you imagine that being selected in 3 straight? Not separate, a couple of years apart, 3 straight years. Oh, yeah, by the way, you're going to this team. Oh, yeah, you're going to this team. So, but anyways, it was Jim Thompson.
It's good to be wanted, right?
Yeah.
Exactly right. Well, the Kings must have really wanted him back because they traded back for him twice, too. So maybe he was like he was their designated expansion draftee. Oh, boy. So anyways, speaking of the expansion draft, the big expansion draft happened Wednesday. The big rollout was on ESPN, and by the time the show started, everybody pretty much knew what the picks were. I didn't really have a problem with it. Some people did. What do you guys think?
I mean, to me, I don't blame the reporter. I mean, if you get that information from a reliable source, you're going to put it out there. I think it was anticlimactic for the fans, though, that everybody knew. Look, it made my job easier. I did my podcast. I knew who was picked. I didn't have to wait for the 8:00 p.m. start to the show. But realistically, they got to find out how that leaked out and try to prevent it, because it did sort of ruin the moment for the fans, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Rich?
Well, actually, what you said is spot on. I mean, if you're reporting and you have the hot news, you break it. I mean, that's doing these podcasts, Scott. Yourself. We're always like, I wish we had these up to date stories so that we could be one of the first out there. But you go with what you got. You're right. It kind of ruins the moment, but I'm all right with it. It's going to happen anyways, right? So,
well, I think part of the problem is because the NHL wanted those lists in by I think it was 11:00 that morning, and you're not going on till 8:00 on ESPN, so that's 9 hours. And in the internet world, you can't keep a secret for 9 hours. Let's face it. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, nine minutes.
Yeah. You got to think this through a little bit here. And I tell you, when that show first started, even though everybody knew who the picks were pretty much, it started off perfectly because, Commissioner Bettman got booed right off the start. And he took it right in stride, too. I loved it. It was great, because he said, "Oh, Seattle, you're officially a hockey town now. You're booing me," But did you guys? So Gil, I know you watched. So Rich, did you see it or?
I didn't get to see it. No.
I watched it anyway because I'm obviously anything hockey content related I want to watch.
Sure.
And like I said, it started great, but I was kind of disappointed that they at least didn't tell some of the presenters how the players' names are pronounced.
Oh
yeah.
I'm like, man, couldn't somebody just at least whisper in their ear how you say Cal Jankrock or, what was the other one? Jonas Donskoy.
Right.
Jonas Donskanai or something. What? I'm going, oh my God. I go,
the whole thing was a little fishy, I thought.
Well, they pull out a card out of a fish. I thought that was a little over the top.
All of the fish stuff, throwing fish from the stage and stuff. I was like,
and the octopus. Don't forget the octopus.
Now the octopus, I was in on that. That was good.
I like the octopus.
Yeah, I did.
So that was kind of neat. They didn't even have to do like computer graphics for it or anything either.
No, that was great.
That octopus was a real pro.
Afterwards, you're going, oh, poor little fishies.
Yeah,
they're rubbing them down, and they got a massage and everything. I don't know what was going on there.
But, as far as the picks themselves go, Seattle really avoided a lot of the big names that were out there. Carey Price was out there. Vlad Tarasenko was out there. What do you guys think? Should they have maybe gone after a couple of the big names just to kind of put the team on the map, or are you happy with the way they did things?
Well, I had heard, what was it, the 5-year contract and the health issues is what kind of scared them away from Carey Price. That's what I had heard. So, I mean, I don't know. They seem to have made a splash in the next couple days, so I'm fine with that too.
What do you think, Gil?
Well, I mean, look, the problem that I think the Kraken are going to have is trying to live up to what the Golden Knights did 4 years ago. And that's not going to happen. I'm willing to – I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I'd be willing to bet a fairly sizable amount of money that the Kraken are not going to make the Stanley Cup final in their first season in the league. But, look, I think that they have a plan. They drafted primarily, stronger on defense than up front. I think they're looking a little bit more long-term than the Golden Knights were. They have a coach who specializes in younger players and coaching up younger players, developing them. I think they'll compete for a playoff berth in their first year, may or may not make it, but they're not going to be first-year Washington Capitals or Ottawa Senators kind of a disaster, thankfully, because of the way the rules are right now. So, they'll struggle to score goals unless they add another big offensive name with some of the cap space they have left. But I think 2 or 3 years down the road, this team has the potential to do a lot better.
Yeah, so you're saying they're not going to be as putrid as those fish that they pulled the cards out of, is basically what you're trying to say. I think they'll be competitive, especially given that the Pacific Division is very weak. Let's just be honest. I mean, and I'm a Kings fan, and I can say that. I mean, it's probably one of the easiest divisions in hockey. But the thing, and it could very well be a smart plan for them to go long term. Gil, you hit the nail on the head. They're not going to replicate what the Golden Knights did. And there's also another big difference between the Kraken and the Golden Knights in the fact that when the Golden Knights came into the league, they were the only game in town in Las Vegas. No competition whatsoever. The Raiders are there now, and I'm sure Major League Baseball and the National Basketball Association will be there soon enough. But that's pretty much the Golden Knights town, right? Whereas in Seattle, they're going to have all this momentum with the team coming. They already sold out their season tickets. The arena is already pretty much completely sold out for all their home games this year. They're going to have that new team momentum. But they're in a sports market that's saturated. You got the Mariners there. The Seahawks are extremely popular. The Sounders from MLS are out of control popular out there. I'm sure the NBA is going to be coming back soon. So if the Kraken are going to be successful long-term and want to stay on that scene in the Seattle sports market, they're going to have to be good in a few years. Not necessarily right now, but in order to kind of stay on the forefront, you're right. They're going to have something of a decent team put together within 2 to 3 years. And, Ronnie Francis may be onto something. I mean, I personally thought that, I don't know, I would have taken a chance taking Vladimir Tarasenko. I mean, granted, they got Vince Dunn. They loaded up on defense. So they took Vince Dunn from St. Louis. But I don't know. I still think that with the amount of cap space that they have, it wouldn't have hurt to have that one star player that everybody can kind of gravitate to. And I think Vladdy Tarasenko would have been a great spot. Oh, well, I'm not the manager. So otherwise, I'd be out there pulling cards out of fish, right? And enough about that, cards out of fish. So after that, we had the NHL entry draft, which, I'll tell you, it was kind of almost anticlimactic this year, given the difficulties in trying to rate these players because of everything that happened with COVID. Did you guys get a chance to watch any of that, or?
I did not get a chance to watch much of it. No, I mean the Islanders didn't have a first-round pick, so I knew it was going to be pretty quiet. So,
at least you were hoping that Lou wasn't going to pull a surprise and get back into the first round on you, right?
I was pretty confident, but I was ready in case he did.
Yeah, there was the whole virtual thing again, and it just kind of, hopefully this is it for virtual drafts of any kind of, for any sport really. I feel so bad for those kids, right? That's their big moment, especially in the first round. They want to get up on the stage and have the crowd there going crazy for them. I will say I watched most of it. Because again, I'm a hockey nerd, and I will, even though if my team, it doesn't matter. I'll sit there anyway. And they kept doing these timeouts. Teams would call a timeout in the middle of the draft every time they were going to make a trade. And I don't know, it's like a pet peeve of mine. It just kind of irritated me, right? It's like, really, you're going to drag this pick out for another 5 to 10 minutes when you're finalizing this trade? Just announce a trade and work out the details later on. But anyways, that's just me. But I don't know. I think this truly is one of those draft years where who knows where the diamonds out of the roughs are going to come from for this one. Because, again, you just had so little time to do any kind of evaluations or anything like that. And they're all saying that this is the first year in a very long time and none of the first rounders, or nobody actually, is going to play in the NHL in their first year. So we'll see. We'll definitely see on that one. And that leads us to the last part of the incredible hockey week is a free agent frenzy, which started yesterday, actually. And flat cap be damned, I think, is probably the key word there. So, Gil, who do you think are some of the winners out of the free agent frenzy were?
Well, I mean, I think the Devils did really well by adding Dougie Hamilton. I just, now they have Dougie Hamilton and PK Subban, so they're kind of loaded with that kind of defenseman who can put some points up. I just think that gives them a lot of respectability and takes that team up a notch in their rebuilding program. And I just think also, a lot of goalies switching places over the course of the first day of free agency. And I think, you're looking for another winner. Player agents, like you said, flat cap be damned. The agents are smiling from ear to ear after day one of free agency.
Yeah, the Devils did a very good job of upgrading themselves, especially on defense. It wasn't just Dougie Hamilton, but they got Ryan Graves via trade, and then they still got Ty Smith there. So they're, I'll give the Devils a lot of credit. They're at least, making a legit effort to get better. Rich, who were some of your winners from the free agent frenzy?
My boy, Darcy Kemper. Huh?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I saw that trade and I went nuts. That is a team that right now, Colorado is a team that's like, the hell with it. We're winning now. We are absolutely winning now. We're not going to mess around. I mean, that's a win-win for everybody. Kemper was wasting away with the Coyotes. Let's face it. I mean, he's playing for a team that kind of he's getting shelled. So to go to Colorado, obviously he's got a chance to win now, and it's great. It's great for both teams. So.
Oh, who else won was Arizona's draft board next year. They've got 5 second-round draft picks next year.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's like, yeah, take it.
So, yeah, when they go back to in person, they're just going to have the general manager just stand there. You just stand over here. You're going to be back soon enough. Don't go anywhere. But no, that's the amount of goalie swapping I couldn't believe. That was really shocking. And Grubauer going to Seattle.
Yes,
I mean which obviously was the impetus for the Kemper trade. I'm just kind of surprised how all that worked out because Colorado wasn't willing to pay him because he got $5.9 million per season from Seattle for 6 years. Kemper's in the last year of his contract at $3.5 million. So I understand wanting to do the cap savings. But this trade happened after they had already re-signed Cal McCarr to that 6-year, $9 million a year contract. And if you ask me, they got Gabe Landeskog pretty cheap. I thought Landeskog was going to get more money. If he'd have hit the open market, he definitely would have. Good on them, But then Brandon Saad, just a couple hours ago, turns around and signs with the Blues for 5 years, only $4.5 million per season, which again, I don't understand how he didn't get more money. I really don't get it, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make out of all this is, if you're Colorado, you saved this money, so you didn't offer Saad that kind of money to stay with a team that's going to be a perennial cup contender now. I don't know. It's just strange. It really is. But we'll see what happens. Dave, I will say your Sabres got to do something about their goaltending situation. Speaking of which, you traded away every NHL goaltender you had, and or let them go in free agency.
They knew how I was able to switch positions with.
Yeah,
me
I think you better get out to Buffalo,
golf.
pal.
Yeah. So they were looking at me. They've talked to me a couple times.
Yeah,
Tell them you'll do it for the league minimum.
Yeah.
Hey.
Scott, I want to ask you what you thought about Freddie Anderson going to the Hurricanes.
That was another surprise for me.
Yeah.
Because they trade away Nedeljkovic, who was the Calder, I think he was the Calder winner. And because they didn't want to pay him.
Yeah.
So here you got, and this guy was homegrown. He's 25 years old. He could have led them into the future for a long period of time. And especially Detroit gave him an extension. It was peanuts.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? 2 years, $3 million a year, something like that. And they bring in Freddie Anderson. I think he got a little over $5 million, if I'm not mistaken. So what are they doing? I don't get it.
I know how much of a fan you've been with Freddie Anderson over the years. So.
Well, it's Freddie Anderson, I can live with it. After he left the Ducks, I was okay with him. But there was another one I wanted to talk about was the Marc-Andre Fleury situation.
Oh, God.
Terrible. I don't. And again, I'm not trying to pile on the bandwagon here.
Yeah.
But what did this guy do to deserve that?
I don't know how they just bye. Have fun in your new life.
And he finds out on Twitter. Have the courtesy to at least tell the guy. He for all he did for that franchise from the start, he's owed at least that much.
Right, exactly. And just to totally kick the guy to the curb. I think it's interesting though with the way his contract's set up. So if he does not report to Chicago, then nobody gets a cap hit. I don't know. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm kind of so tired of seeing all these cap games being played. I almost wish they would just get rid of the thing.
Yeah.
If there's going to be so many different ways around things, you can LTIR this and bury that and trade other cap hits for nothing. You know what? Just get rid of it. I understand that's going to be a huge advantage for the large market teams, but at what point do you not just say enough's enough? Okay.
Yeah. No.
Well, it's tricky because there was such a big advantage for the big market teams before they implemented the cap. And yet it was the cap. For example, you look at the New York Rangers, the cap saved the Rangers from themselves because they would always be bringing in these big ticket free agents. They'd make lots of headlines in July and very few headlines in May and June. So when the playoffs were going on. So, even with the cap, without the cap, you still need good, smart management. And, I think the cap has its benefits as far as keeping things relatively level as far as the playing field goes, but there are too many ways around it. And it's almost like, one of those deals where, okay, they close a loophole, they find another. They close this one, they find another. So it's a little bit of a cat and mouse game.
Well, you wonder why a lot of these GMs have lawyer degrees as well. Well, there you go, right?
Yeah, and then people were complaining about the Lightning with the playoffs that, oh yeah, if this was the regular season, they'd be $16 million over the cap, and but they were following the rules.
Right.
Maybe the rules should change that you still should have a limit as far as what you could put on the ice in the playoffs in some way, but again, it's a loophole. They used it and they were within the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't like the rule at all.
Agreed.
I personally think that it should be right there in the rules. If and I understand that players do not get paid in the playoffs, and that's something that maybe not everybody knows is that once the regular season is over, those players are done getting paid because their contracts are based on regular season pay. But in all things, all things being fair, if you're going to make everybody follow a cap in the regular season, then it should just carry through to the end of the season. I mean, that's, I don't like this whole idea of, trading for guys who are LTIR just so you can go over during the season. And, I'm not going to say it's dirty. It's not shady. It's part of the rules, but it's definitely a rule that needs to be changed. There's no doubt about that. Guys, I think another actual winner out of this whole weekend was the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, here's a team that, everybody was starting to write off, leave them for dead, right? And then they turn around, they got 3 first-round picks, and suddenly, I don't think they're going to be a playoff contender this year, but the future is suddenly starting to look very bright in Columbus. And I cannot believe the contract the Chicago Blackhawks gave to Seth Jones.
Neither can Seth Jones.
Yeah, I know, right? He must have been, where's that pen? Before they change your mind, give me that pen. Oh, boy. But, I mean, with these moves, you guys think that do the Hawks become a contender again?
They become respectable.
Yeah.
I think they take a step forward, but they're still another year or two away, I think.
Yeah. I think so, too. And, again, good for them to try to get better. Because I'll tell you, I don't mind seeing teams that try to get aggressive to become better. I think it makes things, number one, interesting for starters. And two, you know what? Go for it. If you think you got a chance, why not? But I don't know. I think over the next couple of years or so here, you're going to start seeing some balances of power starting to shift. It's going to be interesting to see what Tampa Bay still has work to do to get under the cap. Even though they've lost Yanni Gourde, they lost Blake Coleman, David Savard's gone. They did bring in Brian Elliott as a backup, so that's and they made some other minor moves, really. But I see today they signed Corey Perry, which, yeah. Well, yeah, but you know what, though? Laugh all you want, because, I mean, for most of his career, I couldn't stand Corey Perry either. But let's be honest. True. Yeah, right? No way. But to be perfectly honest with you, in the twilight of his career, he's not the 50-goal scorer anymore, but he's actually making a difference on the teams that he's going to. He was very serviceable in Dallas. He was a big part of that Montreal run last year, believe it or not. Just not in a scorer's role, but as a locker room kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I don't, if you got a veteran-laden team, he's not the worst guy to have on.
He's still a useful player. He's not a star anymore, but he's a useful player.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Montreal, I just want to ask you guys, since I'm a Kings fan, I got to know other opinions here. Did the Kings overpay for Philip Deneau?
A little bit. A little bit.
6 years, $5.5 million per.
Yeah. I would say a little bit too.
The thing with the Kings is they're so loaded at center with their prospects that, I get wanting to have a shutdown center, especially if you're going to have Connor McDavid back in your division. Elias Pettersson. I get that. I understand that. And you know what? Good for them for making a splash. But I think a lot of that's going to depend on how much the cap goes up over the next few years. Because now they're going to start having to trade some of those prospects because there's just simply not going to be enough room. No. Right? You can't have 4 lines full of, superstar prospect kids and then expect to be successful. Because look at Tampa Bay. They didn't start winning championships until they started loading their bottom 6 up with grinders and guys that aren't afraid to go in the corners and get to the dirty areas, right? Mm-hmm. So that's going to be very interesting to see how all that plays out. But, speaking of contracts that I kind of think were a bit of an overpay, and I wanted to use that as a nice little segue, by the way, guys. Alex Ovechkin, 5 years, $9.5 million per. Rich, I know you want to talk about this.
I love it. Way to sink that team. Listen, I'm going to tell you what. I know that they want him to break Gretzky's record in a Caps uniform, but man, woof! Did you just sunk that team? I'm sorry. That's I have no problem with him getting paid, but 5 years, man. Oh man, that's a stretch. That's a real stretch. And was it $47 million?
Yes, it's $9.5 million per he's getting. So
woo-wee. Yeah, there was I was having this conversation with Jamie, Jamie who's done the show before, he's a huge Caps fan, and we always talk about this because obviously being the Crosby fan, I never want to see Crosby go anywhere either. But there's a time when you stop looking at the player, you got to start looking at the future of the team. And I understand it. You had a great deal of success with that player. He's the face of your franchise. He's been probably one of the faces of the NHL. But at what time do you look at it and you go, it's time to start cutting back, or we got to start thinking of moving on? It's going to happen with Crosby. It happens with everybody. That's
right.
The nature of the game. And I think the players understand it. They should understand it. Nobody likes to see that kind of thing happen. Teams move on from a star, but man, that's a hefty contract to give to somebody in the very late years. Man.
Well, I'll tell you, a Russian machine better never break. That's for sure with that kind of contract. Gil, do you agree with Rich?
Yeah, let's just say year one of that contract is going to be a lot better for the team than year 5. Let's put it that way. It's diminishing returns, and the only way you sort of get that money is ticket sales. You say, okay, people are going to pay to see Alexander Ovechkin even when he's not the same Alexander Ovechkin that he was in his prime. We'll get this money back in ticket sales, but he's going to hurt your cap by the time this deal is over. And they overpaid, no question.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I'm very surprised actually, and I'm not even surprised at the term. I'm surprised at the AAV because let's face it, Ovi has made his money. Mm-hmm. Okay, he's made his money, and really, and I get the argument. Well, he's the face of the franchise. Look what he did for them. He deserves it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, he deserves to get paid. But with especially the cap being flat for next year or two anyways, he has hamstrung that team from getting any better. And let's face it, and I'm not trying to pick on it, but the Caps are suddenly a team that's going to be on the decline here pretty soon. They've got way too many high-ticket, over 30-year-old contracts that where are they going to go? They don't have a loaded prospect pool, and I don't know. I mean, if Ovi was really interested in winning any more cups, he would have said, yeah, okay, I want to be here for 5 years. Pay me $5 million per. Okay, I made my money. I just want to break this record. Right? But instead, I mean, he took them right to the bank, which has got to make me wonder if there was anybody else that was actually literally or really trying to pursue him for Washington to throw that kind of an offer out there.
I don't know.
I don't know. What I do want to know is what was Ovechkin's first demand, because if they settled at 9.5, what did he ask for the first time around?
That's a very good point. Very, very good point. Because if you're watching, you just don't throw that number out there first, right?
No.
You don't do that unless maybe the GM had a little bit too much to drink the night before or something. I don't know, but who's for me to say? But they said that with this contract, he's got to average 33 goals a year now to break Gretzky's record. And I'll tell you, Gretzky was my idol growing up. But if there's somebody that's going to break his goal scoring record, I wouldn't really have that much of a problem with it if it was Ovi, especially given all the time he's actually missed because of lockouts and everything else that's gone on with the COVID season. So, good for him. I hope he's going to be happy one way or another. He's not going to be, even if he doesn't break the record, he's going to be rolling in cash for the rest of his life. So
he didn't break, even if he doesn't break the record, he broke the bank. So he'll be fine.
Their owner might not be too happy, but I read somewhere he just got a doctorate in something. I forgot what it was. So what better way to celebrate getting your doctorate than getting overpaid by many, many, many millions? So
must have been finance.
Yeah.
Business, yeah.
Economics, right?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Well, folks, that's about all we got for segment 2 of Hockey Hot Takes here. So we're going to end that like we always do with Website of the Week. Website of the Week is brought to you by 315hockey.com. 315hockey.com is your news hub for all levels of hockey in Central New York. This week's Website of the Week is dailyfaceoff.com. Now, this is a website that Frank Saravelli writes for, who broke most of the picks for the expansion draft. It's a good website. You get the daily line combinations, starting goaltenders, and maybe the inside scoop on the next expansion draft, whenever that might be. So that's it for Website of the Week. We're going to take our last commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to come back with the Zamboni Time Machine. We'll see you in a second.
Need to find that gift for someone special?
Visit Little Falls Presents at the Stone Mill and Canal Place. Stop by today to find unique artist work, t-shirts, coffee cups, gift towels, greeting cards, tote bags, koozies, and original oil paintings and prints. It's all about the art of the gift. For more information, visit mylittlefalls.com/shop or call 315-508-5310 for details.
And we're back with segment 3 of Marty's Illegal Stick, the Zamboni Time Machine. The Zamboni Time Machine is brought to you by Zamboni.com, and the Zamboni name is used with permission. This week, the Zamboni Time Machine takes us back to January 3rd, 1929, the night Eddie Shore drove all night through a snowstorm to play in a game. Eddie Shore played for the Boston Bruins and is widely considered to be hockey's first superstar defenseman. He was the roughest as he was talented, and over the course of his career, he broke his back, collarbone, hip, and had every tooth in his mouth knocked out, broke his nose 14 times, broke his jaw 5 times, and had over 900 stitches put in his body. Despite all this, Shore rarely missed a game. Dave, you had something similar, didn't you?
Old-time hockey.
Yeah. You got to tell that story next time you're at a Diamond Dog team.
Yeah.
In Shore's era, teams traveled by train as air travel was in its infancy. The Bruins were scheduled to play a game on January 3rd in Montreal against the Maroons, and every member of the Bruins managed to make the train to Montreal except for Shore, who missed the train because of a traffic jam. The next train to Montreal was canceled because of an incoming blizzard, but Shore absolutely refused to miss the game. He reached out to a wealthy friend of his who loaned Shore the use of his chauffeur and his limousine. As they headed north out of Boston, the storm hit and it was a doozy. The driver did not want to go any further, so Shore made him get into the passenger seat and took over the driving himself. The pair found an all-night gas station where they bought some chains for the tires, but that did not help the visibility as the wipers froze to the windshield. Shore removed the top half of the windshield, and they continued through the night, driving through the sleet and blizzard conditions without the protection of the windshield. I think you've done that before too, haven't you, Dave?
Yeah.
They had to stop and purchase another set of tire chains, and even with those, they still had to be pulled out of a ditch twice by people who happened to live nearby. Despite all of this, Eddie Shore arrived in Montreal at 5:30, just in time for the game at 7. Despite no sleep, numb legs and hands, and a face that was windburned and frostbitten, Shore talked Bruins coach Art Ross into letting him play that night. The Bruins won 1-0 on a goal by, you guessed it, Eddie Shore. And that, my friends, concludes this week's trip on the Zamboni Time Machine.
Where do you get this stuff from?
Could you imagine that happening nowadays?
No.
No. Well, they'd call up and get the private jet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just unreal. I'm just picturing it in my head, you know? Imagine being that poor person in the middle of the night, asleep, blizzard, and there's Eddie Shore wailing on your door. You got to get your horse out. You got to get me out of the ditch. I got to make it to Montreal.
Oh,
with all 900 stitches in his body, too. That must have been a sight, too. Huh?
Oh, wow.
Driving without a windshield in a blizzard, that's...
Yeah.
Could you imagine it? Of course, back then, that was the days of, like, open cab trucks and all that.
Yeah.
It's just a different breed back then, I guess.
Didn't have a choice.
I know, right?
Your face would still freeze. I mean,
yeah.
Jeez.
But it's Eddie Shore. He doesn't. The guy broke his back. I mean, what's he care?
True.
Got to play that game.
That's right. And win it on top of that.
Right.
Well, fellas, that was a lot of fun. I just appreciate both of you coming on. Gil, you're on Twitter, right?
Yeah. It's at Ice Wars NYR VS NYI.
Excellent. And if you ever want to get Gil's book, it's right here. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold, you can find it. And trust me, you will not be disappointed. Doesn't matter if you're a Rangers, Islanders fan. It's just a great hockey read. So, and Gil, your Locked On Islanders podcast can be found on all major podcast platforms, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, this has been so much fun. Shakutami, it was great to have you back, man.
Thank you, sir.
It really was.
Always good to be here.
Absolutely. So we'll have both you guys back sometime soon, and we'll do this again.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I just want to let everybody know that you can find us at martysatlegalstick.com, and you can find this show on all major podcast platforms under the My Little Falls banner and on YouTube as well. We're on Facebook and Twitter at Marty's Illegal Stick Hockey Podcast. So for Gil Martin, For Shakutami, Rich Massucci, and Dave the Save Warner, I'm Scott Kinville. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.